Golf scoring sounds simple, just count your strokes right, so why does it feel like you need a calculator, a rulebook, and maybe even a maths teacher to make sense of it? If terms like birdie, bogey, and eagle sound more like a pet store than a golf course, don't worry, you're not alone. In this video, I'll break down everything you need to know about golf scoring in a way that actually makes sense. By the end, you'll know exactly what your score means and whether you've mastered the game or just provided free entertainment for the group behind you. Let's get started. Simply put, in golf, you count how many strokes or hits of the ball it takes to finish each hole. The fewer, the better. At the end of the round, you take all your shots, add them up, and wonder why you voluntarily put yourself through this. Or better yet, you watch as your friend, armed with some creative math, somehow beats you by 5 strokes. Each hole on a golf course has a set number of strokes you're supposed to take. This is known as par. But for beginner golfers, par is often more of a pipe dream than a realistic expectation. Kind of like when a recipe says prep time 20 minutes and half an hour later you're still chopping onions. A par 3 means you should finish the hole in 3 shots. A par 4 in 4 shots, and a par 5, well, you get the idea. For the pros, par is nothing special. It is like showing up to work on time. They're aiming for birdies, eagles, and the occasional history-making albatross. Meanwhile, the rest of us are celebrating a single par like we just won the Masters. Group chat, social media, maybe even a victory lap around the green. But every now and then something magical happens. You go one better than par. A birdie. A birdie is when you complete a hole in 1 stroke less than par, so 2 strokes on a par 3, 3 strokes on a par 4, or 4 strokes on a par 5. It's golf's way of giving you a small taste of greatness before returning you to the regular misery of golf. The term birdie comes from the early 1900s American slang where bird meant cool or excellent, and let's be honest, making a birdie does feel pretty cool. It's that rare moment when the stars align, your swing works, and you feel like you belong on the PGA Tour, until your next shot brings you right back to reality. Next up is the eagle, a score that means finishing a hole 2 strokes under par, like a 3 on a par 5 or a 2 on a par 4. The name follows the birdie theme, but since an eagle is bigger, more majestic bird, golfers decided it deserved a promotion. For pros, eagles happen fairly often, especially on shorter par 5s where they can reach the green in 2. For amateurs, it's more of a once-in-a-lifetime event, kind of like hitting every green light on the way to work, or actually sticking to your New Year's resolution. If you do make one, you have full permission to celebrate obnoxiously in the faces of all your friends and remind them of it for the next 27 years. And if you think eagles are rare, wait until you hear about the albatross. 3 strokes under par. That means a 2 on a par 5. It's so rare that a lot of pro golfers go their entire careers without seeing one. The name fits because, like the actual bird, albatrosses are massive, majestic, and almost mythical. Scoring an albatross is so rare that if you were somehow to get one, you have no choice but to make it your entire personality. Business cards, custom t-shirts, and maybe even a small documentary about the event. And to cap off the list of rare but exciting scores, we have the hole-in-one, golf's ultimate mic drop moment. Hitting the ball straight into the hole in a single shot straight off the tee is the dream. And yes, I know I've already called eagles and albatrosses rare, but this is next level rare. And if you do pull it off, tradition says you have to buy drinks for everyone out on the course, making it the only sport where perfection comes with a massive bar tab. So, we've covered the dream scores, birdies, eagles, even the once-in-a-lifetime albatross or hole-in-one, but let's be real, those are exceptions, not the rule. Now it's time to talk about the scores that actually matter, the ones that 99% of golfers, especially beginners like you and I, rack up on a regular basis. Buckle up, because this is where things start to get ugly. First up is the bogey. This happens when you take 1 stroke over par, like a 5 on a par 4 or a 4 on a par 3. It's not particularly ideal, but for beginners it's not that much of a disaster either. Like most things in golf, bogey has a strange origin. In the late 1800s, British golfers used a bogey score to mark the strokes an average player should take, essentially an early version of par. The name comes from an old song about the bogeyman, a mysterious figure no one could catch. Since golfers were always chasing this perfect score but rarely reaching it, the name, bogey, stuck. So, in a way, every time you make a bogey, you're kind of just living up to 19th century expectations. And let's be honest, living up to 19th century expectations isn't that impressive. Those guys were playing golf with wooden clubs, feather-stuffed balls, and wearing tweed suits in the summer heat. If they shot the same bogey score with 1800s technology, what's our excuse with graphite shafts, rangefinders, and golf balls designed by scientists? You can also get double or triple bogeys, which happens when you take 2 or 3 strokes over par. So if a hole is a par 4 and you finish in 6 shots, that's a double bogey, whereas 7 shots would be a triple bogey. The good news is that even the pros make double and triple bogeys sometimes. The bad news, they often follow it up with birdies, which is kind of where our similarities end. If you go beyond a triple bogey, well, now we're entering just happy to be there territory. At this point, most golfers stop counting and start making excuses. The wind picked up, this course is playing long today, or the classic, I'm just out here for the fun of it. Some call it a quadruple bogey when you go 4 shots over par, but most golfers just call it let's move on. Anything worse, and it's less about keeping score and more about creative storytelling, because let's be honest, nobody actually saw that one extra chip shot, right? And then there's the dreaded snowman, a score of 8 on a single hole, named because the number 8 resembles a snowman on the scorecard. That said, on a par 5, an 8 is just a triple bogey, which isn't as disastrous as it sounds, so whilst it's never ideal, a snowman isn't the end of the world. While we have plenty of silly names for bad scores, there is however a secret weapon that comes to the rescue of many amateur golfers, the mulligan. A mulligan is golf's unofficial get-out-of-jail-free card. Hit a terrible shot, shout mulligan, and just like that, it never happened. No penalty, no judgment, well, unless your playing partners are sticklers for the rules. It's not exactly legal in tournaments, but in casual rounds, it's basically an unspoken agreement. Just don't overdo it. If you're yelling mulligan for the 3rd time and still haven't left the first tee box, it might be time to accept your fate. Now, throughout this video, we've talked about how every shot adds up to your final score, but not every golf game works that way. There are actually 2 main ways to keep score in golf: stroke play and match play. In stroke play, every single shot counts, and at the end of the round, the golfer with the lowest score wins. It's simple, it's unforgiving, and it's the reason so many golf scorecards end up mysteriously lost after a rough day out on the course. Then there's match play, which is a little more forgiving. Instead of counting every stroke, you're playing one hole at a time. If you take 4 shots and your opponent takes 5, you win that individual hole. It doesn't matter if you took 10 shots on the last hole, which, let's be honest, is a very real possibility. In match play, one terrible hole won't ruin your entire round, just your self-esteem. So, whether you're grinding through stroke play or battling head-to-head in match play, the goal is the same: take as few shots as possible and try to keep your sanity intact. When it comes to recording scores, at the end of each hole you write down your score on a scorecard, which is either a neatly organised sheet of paper or, if you're like most golfers, a crumpled mess shoved into your back pocket. In a casual round, you usually keep track of your own score, but in competitions, golfers record each other's scores as a way to prevent any how should we put it, creative math. At the end of the round, the scores are added up, double-checked, and signed off. Of course, if your score starts creeping into triple digits, there's always a simple solution. Just stop keeping track altogether and call it a practice round. And that's golf scoring: pars, birdies, bogeys, eagles, and even the dreaded snowman. Now, at least when you're adding up your score at the end of the round, you'll know exactly what those numbers mean, even if you don't always like them. Golf can be frustrating, unpredictable, and occasionally soul-crushing, but that's also what makes it fun. One bad hole won't ruin your round, just like one great shot can keep you coming back for more. So whether you're chasing birdies or just trying to avoid writing down too many 8s, remember, every golfer has been there. If you found this video helpful or at least mildly entertaining, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. What's the worst score you've ever had on a single hole? No judgment, honestly, even if it's in the double digits. Even if it's 27.